What happens when two strangers with two completely different opinions meet for dinner? In this social experiment, people from all walks of life are paired up with their direct opposite and guided through a menu of questions specifically designed to promote discussion, disagreement and debate. Will they agree to disagree?
You raised the racism thing.
Huh. I'm a female, but I'm not a feminist.
You've just taken a massive leap.
I'm not biologically female and very comfortable with that.
Could they end up bonding over shared life experiences?
I see a smile on your face. What are you thinking right now? When you put that back to me, it does sound rather foolish. I admire that so much about you.
Or will it be fireworks from the off?
They are the most outdated thing in the world.
I'm not going to accept that comment.
No.
Have you ever thought about being a sex worker?
I'd end up doing more damage than good.
Are you really a traveller?
What a truly obnoxious thing to say.
Do you trust the governments?
Ha! No.
It's a man and a woman make a child. It's just a fact.
This is Eating with the Enemy. In this restaurant, a group of individuals have agreed to meet their direct opposites for dinner. Each pair has been carefully selected due to their differing opinions on a variety of subjects.
I think with TikTok, there's so many toxic trends.
I would then get injected with some sort of stuff to help me to transition.
Come on.
It's true.
A selection of thought-provoking questions will guide them through their conversation.
Does beauty bring you happiness?
I don't think so.
Watching on are psychological and behavioural experts, there to observe what happens when so-called enemies meet face to face.
There is no safe space nowadays for a conversation with our opposites. And if someone has a different point of view, we demonise them.
Eating with somebody is an incredibly vulnerable and intimate experience. We immediately modify those visceral responses that we can launch so quickly behind a screen, because now, as we sit in front of somebody, we have to take responsibility for our opinions.
If we limit our conversations to people with similar points of view, it only reinforces what we already believe. This experiment is an antidote to all of that.
With all of the tables set, who's first to pull up a chair?
I'm a journalist and I'm from Dublin. I'll be fairly forthright, I can be slightly dogmatic, but when I die, I would like people to say, he was grand. I find a lot of younger people now are incredibly judgmental. The thing that genuinely terrifies me, the social media mob who decide that they can cancel somebody at a minute's notice. I'm all about free speech, and we now seem to live in this sort of war of annihilation between two sides. I love a good row, I love a good debate, but yeah, that'll be about the extent of it. And a free dinner, obviously. No, thank you.
Ian doesn't have to wait too long, as his dinner companion has already arrived.
Hey.
They don't.
My name is Jack. I'm 20 and I'm a communist. Communism is no class, no state, no money. I think my worst quality is that I'm very stubborn when it comes to my beliefs. My biggest issue is definitely LGBT rights. We need to get the rights we deserve. I find it very hard to understand people who believe in capitalism to not really care and just to be a bit ignorant or privileged. If they're not willing to listen, there's nothing I can really do. I don't necessarily believe I will change their minds, but I do hope that they are able to at least recognize where I'm coming from.
I honestly didn't know what to expect, but he seems like a nice young fella. I presume you can still call them young fellas these days, yeah?
My first impressions was that his arms were crossed, he wouldn't look at me. I don't know if he was nervous. I don't know if he didn't like the look of me.
Right,
I'm Jack.
Sorry?
I'm Jack.
Jack?
Yeah.
Nice to meet you, Jack.
Do you believe your circumstances dictate your outcomes in life? I do. I mean, I think it would be a bit ignorant to say that you can just somehow overcome your circumstances instantly. Like, you know, a lot of capitalists believe that, like, pull yourself up by your bootstraps, but that doesn't really mean much if there's none to pull up. So, yeah, I really do think your circumstances dictate your outcomes in life.
Well, they don't, ultimately. Obviously, your circumstances help to form who you are, but they are not the sole formation. of who you are.
Right.
Your background does not define you. You define yourself. And the idea of saying, oh, you can't just tell somebody to sort of pull themselves up or whatever, that's what's known as the tyranny of low expectations. You know, as Ian Brown once sang, it's not where you're from, it's where you're at. And it's all about whether you're going to choose to be a victim or whether you're just basically going to go ahead and make the best life that you possibly can.
But there's so many stuff outside your control. Mental space doesn't mean nothing if you have a mental illness. You cannot control when you go manic besides medication. But what if you can't get medication? What if medication is too expensive for you to get?
That's a mental illness. That's not a socio-economic circumstance. You're talking about a mental illness.
If you're not rich, how are you going to afford the medication for your bipolar? How are you going to afford your medication for your BBD? You cannot.
Let's see who's next in the Eating with the Enemy restaurant.
Hi, I'm Laura. I'm 33 and I'm from County Tipperary. Well, I'm single and I've been working in customer service for the past 3 years. The people that I struggle to see eye to eye with at the minute are so-called modern-day feminists, or those that you know, exploit other women through the sex industry. As Margaret Thatcher said, the facts of life are conservative. You know, being a little bit of a prude isn't necessarily a bad thing. I would like to have a conversation with someone who's the complete opposite to me, to see from their point of view and maybe understand where they're coming from.
Who's here to have dinner with Laura?
My name's Kate. I'm 43. I'm an artist and an escort, and I'm from America. I'm passionate about sex. I like to do all kinds of different sessions, and the power play dynamic is very fun. I like physical contortion because it feels good. I'm a sex athlete. The worst case scenario of somebody I'm eating with today would be somebody that doesn't have anything in common with me. Hi.
Hi, I'm Laura.
Kate.
Nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you, Laura.
My first impressions when I saw Kate, if I'm being honest, it was how tiny she was. She was just like this dainty little thing, you know. She was like a china doll.
We're gonna have lunch.
We are, indeed. We're eating with the enemy.
Frenemy.
Frenemy, I like it. I thought if I shook her hand too much, she would snap in half. That's what I thought when I met her for the first time today.
Nice to meet you,
Yeah, you
Laura.
look lovely.
Thank you.
I like
You're
that
looking
colour
well
on you.
too. Thank you so
Thank you.
much. Thanks. I was immediately just super curious about who it was and why she'd chosen to do it. Hi there. Good, how are you? Thank you.
I did know of Kate. I knew that she was a sex worker. So yes, I'd seen her on TV interviews. I thought, she was quite vulgar, and again, she was, too outspoken about certain issues that I felt should be handled more delicately. I didn't like her.
Research shows that we judge people based on 3 key factors: morality, sociability, and competence.
And we immediately place them into an in bias or an out bias group. Sitting down with somebody is about a shared experience, and that changes how we view each other.
Is capitalism a good thing? I have a funny feeling that we're probably going to have a slightly different approach. But here's the thing, capitalism, for all its flaws, is still by far the best option. If you want to cure somebody of communism, expose them to real communism. And I was exposed to real communism when I was younger, and I went to Romania during Ceausescu's regime. And my father was a communist, and we thought that Romania was a glowing example of how the proletariat work. And it was an absolutely horrifying experience.
Okay, this is the big problem I see with a lot of people who are anti-communist. They always attach communism to these past societies or past regimes that failed. They have failed. The USSR was never socialist. It was never communist. You said
That's the great lie.
If you read any Marxist theory, any capitalist theory, you know it's trying to abolish statehood. Statehood can only be controlled by the economic liberty of the bourgeois. They can... I would say anyone who used to be a communist and is not now either fell for reactionary messaging or was never communist to begin with. You keep defining communism by its past. But that doesn't make sense. It never achieved itself.
Well, maybe that's because it's inherently flawed.
But why is it flawed?
Because it doesn't work.
But why doesn't it work?
Because of human nature.
Because of human nature. Human nature doesn't exist. Like, where
did you get it?
Like, what's
You should be in the Olympics because you've just taken a massive leap. We ended up going back over arguments that I was having with communists 20 years ago. And they were exactly the same arguments. And I think that shows how a lot of that communist ideal, it's just it's frozen in time.
In this restaurant, strangers have been paired up with their absolute opposites for dinner. Each conversation will be helped along by a specially curated menu of questions.
We designed this series of questions to cut straight through the small talk, to get them talking about their topic of interest. And who knows, maybe they have more in common than what they would have thought.
I think from this experiment, people will learn how to be more assertive while also listening to the person we're speaking with. And hopefully, they'll learn how to manage difference and diversity when they meet it in the conversation.
As their food arrives, Kate and Laura are settling in.
Oh, gorgeous. Oh, that looks so good.
The reason I decided to apply for Eating with the Enemy was because I thought it was an interesting concept, mixing the formality of a meal with the excitement of debating someone from a different background to yourself.
When was the last time you changed your mind about something major? That's a great one. Bon appetit, by the way.
Oh, ditto. I think for me, it was probably the abortion issue, if I'm being honest, because believe it or not, Kate, I was very much pro-choice. I campaigned for repeal of the 8th Amendment.
Yes.
And I voted for it. And just a few weeks after the referendum passed, I don't know, it just changed. I thought we'd been lied to. I thought, yeah.
And what do you think spawned the change in your opinion?
I suppose just reflection. I think just the scenes from Dublin Castle, I wasn't expecting such joyous occasions. So, you know, I felt very uncomfortable with it, and how, you know, they're celebrating, you know, people, you know, choosing not to be responsible now when it comes to relationships or pregnancy. I think society has become too permissive. It's kind of leading to a no-holds-barred attitude, not just to relationships, but to drink, drugs, and other forms of, you know, dangerous behaviour.
You know, I had an abortion myself.
Oh, I'm sorry to hear that.
Thank you.
Not passing judgment. I'm just
That's okay. Yeah,
sorry that you
hard.
went through that. Yes.
Thank you. But when I showed up at the place, you know, there was the dichotomy of the movement. There was a man outside holding a sign. Jesus says you're going to hell. There was a woman inside then, when I was in ribbons of tears, who just had this very closed off energy and said to me, are you sure you want to do this? Well, apparently I didn't know, but I didn't feel that I had a space to talk about it. So if people would be able to acknowledge that it is a deep choice that we're making, then she could have said, we have an abortion doula here that you can talk to. Maybe I would have decided not to do it, or maybe I would have decided to do it anyways, but at least I could look back and realize that I made a very holistic and informed choice for myself.
This whole thing, you know, like a woman's right to choose, well, you know, that depends on what they're choosing. Like, if they're choosing not to go ahead with the pregnancy, that's potentially a life that's prevented from coming into the world. I don't think you can just say that's a choice. I absolutely, believe that the embryo has a spirit, and that it's gone on, whether it's, gone on to, an afterlife or somewhere else. So yeah, absolutely.
You can't crush a spirit or a soul. So if anything, that soul, that spirit that was in the embryo just went, whoops, okay, next door. Yeah. So I believe that the embryo is life, and if you leave it be, it will turn into a person. But I think that the life of the woman whose life is already underway should always take precedence.
Time to meet our next dinner guest.
My name is Susan Hughes, and I'm a spiritualist. I do spiritual readings, as in mediumship, and soul-to-soul connection, as in psychic readings. Do I have a crystal ball? Well, I actually do, but I do not use it because I am an intuitive psychic, which means I don't need to have any tools. But yeah, it's good to have one. My opposite person, someone who doesn't believe in the afterlife or believe in religion, rigid in their opinion. But people change. That's what conversation is for.
And who will be joining Susan?
My name is John. I'm from Castleblaney in County Monaghan, and I'm a Pastafarian. I've been involved in litigating some issues on behalf of the Church of the Flying Spaghetti Monster, where the state gives some privileges to the religious that are denied to atheists. It's a good idea to point out that a lot of these superstitions just don't have any evidence behind them at all. John is my name. Nice to meet you.
No, Joe, I'm Susan.
My worst qualities, I would say I have an inability to hold my tongue. There's no polite way to tell someone that they've wasted their life on a delusion. Thank you kindly. What is your job? I've got a very boring answer to that, unfortunately, Susan. I sell software. It would put you to sleep if I went into the details, but yeah, very boring.
That's still good, yes. Well, I am a spiritual medium and a psychic.
Okay.
People come to see me to, I suppose, hear from their loved ones who have crossed over.
Mm-hmm. Never spoken to a psychic medium before, so yeah, a bit wrong-footed, I suppose, in terms of knowing how to react. I suppose it's kind of unfair to ask you to tell me something about me. Is it difficult to do it kind of on the spur of the moment like this? Is that an unfair question to ask?
It's probably unfair, but sure, we'll see how it goes. So no, I'm not going to do a reading for you because of the environment.
Are you patriotic?
No. Are you?
I always find patriotism baffling because it's almost like taking pride in the achievements of others and the history of what other people have managed to accrue. I don't wake up every morning and go, thank God I'm Irish. But I'm not filled with sort of crippling self-loathing and liberal guilt either.
Liberal guilt?
When it comes to liberal guilt is the kind of people in the West who believe that white Westerners are guilty of everything. But liberal guilt is one of the great achievements of the anti-Western brigade, actually, because it's made societies actually...
Who's the anti-Western brigade?
Oh, for God's sake.
I don't know what you're on about. Please explain.
OK, look at, say, for example, critical race theory.
OK.
I mean, I was only reading a piece today that there's a council in Islington that wants to bring in anti-racism training for infants as young as 5 months. That's what you call liberal self-loathing.
So it's a bad thing to teach kids not to be racist?
No, it's a stupid thing to try and teach 5-month-old babies not to be racist.
But what's wrong with that?
Because it's stupid.
So because it's stupid to be anti-racist?
No. Again, that is not what I said. It is stupid to try and teach a 5-month-old about race. Look, the thing is, racism is far too important to absolutely trivialise it by this nonsense.
I have no idea what you're on about.
I'm not surprised. I'm really not.
I do think it's important to teach kids that they shouldn't have biases towards race, towards trans people, towards gay people, or any other minority group.
Trying to talk to somebody who's a true believer is a thankless task because they're never going to be open to change their mind.
In a power struggle, there's power and there's generally resistance. And often how we resist is through our passivity. We acquiesce by slouching or stooping our shoulders. That's a sign that we give over our power to the person in the conversation that we see as more dominant.
People are far less likely to listen to someone else's point of view when their beliefs are very much tied to their identity.
With their meal well underway, Laura and Kate are deep in conversation.
Can I ask what you think about sex work? Because you haven't mentioned it, and that's a biggie.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm not a fan of the industry. I suppose I just find it degrading and exploitative of women. But obviously you know more about the industry than I ever will, so I will...
Yeah, so I'm a sex worker. I'm an escort. And not only am I not ashamed of it, I'm proud. I'm proud of it.
Okay. Yeah, and I'm not judging. I suppose the reason
I don't feel judged.
Yeah. Okay.
Not yet.
No, I promise. I won't. I was probably a little bit taken aback at how proud she was of the work she did, and how she thought it was so empowering and feminine. That kind of did jar at me a little at the start of the meal.
So can I answer any questions for you then?
Okay, why did you decide to become an escort?
Sure. Money.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a job.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's a different kind of job, a very different kind of job. But it's work, it's an economic activity for sure.
Okay. I felt if it was just about money, I mean, like, is that the only job she can do, for money? She's obviously very intelligent, articulate, very confident. And if I could ask you about your clientele, how do they treat you, Kate, if you don't mind me asking? Because,
Sure.
I mean, are they nice men? Do they have families?
I do tend, I think just because of my personality or disposition, to draw people who aren't in relationships and who are maybe a bit lonely or have trouble dating for a number of reasons. And I really enjoy this work with them, I have many, many clients on the spectrum, for example. When I think about the work that I do with people, I come to tears. I do have a lot of clients that struggle with disabilities. That's not to say that disabled people can't date in other ways, but I know that what I do brings value to people's lives. I've had people's families tell me that about their family member that they've hired me for. So how do they treat me? I mean, it's not to say that every session is bliss or something. Unfortunately, I'm not allowed to have security because that's illegal, you see. I would love to be able to have somebody outside my door, right? It's a very big problem here that you can't work with a friend. They call that a brothel. And so what that means is I have to work perfectly alone.
There's nothing I can say to that. I mean, that's the truth. Maybe as women, even though from completely different backgrounds and have different attitudes, I suppose we have that in common, that maybe there are times where we would like to feel a bit more protected.
As John and Susan's evening gets underway, John is keen to learn more about the psychic world.
How about famous people then? Do you ever chat to any famous people that have crossed over? No?
I can't talk to Elvis Presley because I never met him, so there's no connection, do you see? So there
you only talk to people who you've met?
People who you have met. If you've met Elvis Presley, I could maybe be able to connect with Elvis Presley. But if you haven't, you're not going to, because there's no link. You had no earthly link.
That seems a bit weird.
Give me a moment to think about my first impressions of John, because he kind of... I kind of did say, oh no, he's one of those.
The whole point, I assumed, of kind of ethereal spirits is that they're not bound by earthly connections.
No, they're not. All I'm saying to you is that if you said do a consultation for me, can you get Elvis Presley? And if you don't have any link to him other than a love of his music, I can't come forward for you.
If it was true, if psychic mediums were actually real, then Susan should welcome all those questions. She should be delighted to be asked those questions every day, and she would have fantastic answers if psychic mediums were real. I think it's an area where there have been a lot of documented frauds in the past.
Absolutely, and rightly so.
And do you mind me asking how you would tell the difference between someone who really believes what they're saying and someone who's just a con artist?
I think that's an unfortunate situation. If you're going to buy a car, how can you believe that second-hand car salesman is telling you the truth? It's the same thing. You have to go...
Well, if he tells you there's an engine in it, you can open the bonnet and look.
All I can say and speak for myself, John, is that I'm honest and I'm open and I do it with my heart.
Does that mean you don't charge money?
No, that's not what I said. It's my job. Do you charge for your job?
Oh, yes.
Well, then, same thing. We charge for our time.
Well, it's not quite the same thing. I can prove that the software I sell exists.
All right, okay.
Was I hard on Susan? I suspect people who are sympathetic to Susan's perspective would conclude that. I have to say, if someone came to my relatives and wanted to charge money to communicate with the departed on their behalf, I would have some pretty blunt questions to ask them.
Do I overcharge? No. Do I do a lot of voluntary work? Yes, I do. Do I do work for free? Yes, I do. I don't believe he disrespected me personally, but that job that I have taken on, that role I have taken on, he doesn't believe in, so he lacks respect in that way. But I don't feel he disrespected me personally.
Back with Jack and Ian, the conversation has turned to workers' rights.
If a business can't pay its workers fair wages, it shouldn't be in operation. It's as simple as that.
What a truly obnoxious, naive, gullible thing to say.
Business owners exploit their workers. That's how profits are derived.
It's not that they exploit the workers, it's that basically there's a contract between the worker and the business owner.
But the contract is not voluntary. You do not get a choice to work in a society.
Don't work if you don't want to.
And what, die? That's a choice,
Go
work
on the
or die.
dole. Go on the dole. You don't know, nobody's forcing anybody.
This is the problem, it's work or die. And the dole, or unemployment, or anything like that, it's still too low. So eventually...
So where does the money come from?
My point is to get rid of the money.
Of course it is.
What?
Why didn't I see that coming? Of course it is, yeah.
There's sometimes I didn't feel like you were respectful towards me, but at the same time, I think like that's just the nature of it. You know, we had such contradictory views, like what can you really do at the end of the day?
What is your biggest regret?
Sure, my biggest regret is having the abortion. Yeah, yeah. And that, I'll tell you though, Laura, that's only because I might not be having a kid now. I do believe it's life. An embryo is life. But I'm not sad for that thing. The spirit of that embryo will go into another embryo. I'm more sad for me not having a child now. I would have liked to have done that. If I would have known then that I probably wouldn't have a kid then, I may have done it. But it really did not feel like the right circumstance and the right time. So I forgive myself, for sure, for making that choice. But it's hard to grapple with nowadays, yeah.
That kind of stuck with me, how, you know, she believed that, you know, it should be legal and safe and clean, but then yet she regretted her own abortion.
What moment in life made you who you are today?
I think that was probably losing my mother. She died when I was 15.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Thank you. I suppose that kind of made me kind of get a perspective on life, that life is short, because it was quite a short illness. So to kind of live life and, you know, be honest and be loyal and, you know, speak your truth. Are you okay?
Yes. It was actually the food. Okay, I'm sorry. A bit of the vinegary.
All right, okay, so.
That was a tricky moment. I'm wondering if people think I should have pretended that my tears were because of her mother. And frankly, maybe if I wouldn't have got vinegar caught in my throat, I would have had tears then anyway. But I chose to be perfectly transparent. Bless her heart. What was your mother's name?
Eileen.
To Eileen.
Thank you, to Eileen. And to the to your embryo as well. Yeah. Thank you.
This is so interesting to me, Laura, I have to say.
That's good.
Thank you. That was gorgeous.
At John and Susan's table, John still has plenty of questions.
There must have been a first time you heard a voice and thought, what on earth is that? Maybe that's a dead person talking to me.
No, well, no, I didn't quite think it that way, but I'll tell you a wee story.
Okay.
So, when I was about 15, about that age. And remember in the houses, you know, before mobile phones, they had the phones were attached to the walls,
Yes,
attached to the exchanges
with
and
a big
stuff
curly
like that.
cable.
So they would often break down, or you'd get cross lines and stuff like that.
Yeah.
So this happened in our house. And so the phone rang and I went, great, the phone's back. Teenager, want to phone me friends. And I picked it up and it was just all crackles and things like that. And I thought that was very odd. But in the background, I could hear a voice. I could hear a voice. And I put the phone down and it rang again. And I felt there was a child in need. We had to cross line. So I ran out the door. And as I reached the guard gate, a big shooting star went off, you know, in the sky. And so I ran up to my friend's house and I phoned the exchange saying, there's a cross line, you have to find out and track that. And the man in the exchange said, that phone's dead, it's been dead for 3 days, no call has come in or out. So I didn't look at that as a spooky experience. I just thought, that's odd.
I've had cross lines and I've seen shooting stars too.
Yeah.
Yeah, I tended to explain that by crossed lines and shooting stars.
Correct. But you asked me the question, which
That's
I
fair.
answered.
Yes.
What does your badge say?
Oh, a good question. That badge is from the Church of the Flying Spaghetti Monster.
Oh.
So I guess we've been talking a little about...
Tell me that name again.
It's the Church of the Flying Spaghetti Monster. It was formed in the United States some years ago as a response to the promotion of different religious ideas by public bodies. So in Ireland, a conscientious atheist can't be a judge, can't be president, can't be Taoiseach.
Is that true, though? I didn't know that. So to be a judge, you need to believe in God?
You have to take a religious oath. Now,
Okay.
what you could do, you could be an atheist and become a judge by just lying when you take the oath, but I think being
purpose of an oath.
being honest under oath seems to be a pretty low bar to get over in order to be a judge.
Yeah, that's it. I didn't actually know that, John.
Are people too sensitive these days?
No, I don't think people are too sensitive nowadays. I mean, look at it this way, people deserve rights. In America, there's attack against transgender people. They are attacking LGBT rights. They're attacking workers' rights. I think what a lot of people conflate as freedom of speech and the right, what really they want is freedom from consequences. A lot of people talk about, oh, I'm being cancelled on Twitter by SJWs. No, you're just getting consequences of saying something dumb.
Well, the consequences being cancelled, well, then they've been cancelled. I'm firmly of the belief that we should have the right to speak our mind without fear or favour. Actions, obviously, have consequences.
Freedom of speech is different from freedom of platform. You can say whatever you want. You know, that's what you're doing right now. You're saying whatever you want. But that doesn't mean we should give them a platform to talk about whatever they want.
So you only want people you agree with to be given a platform?
I don't want fascists on TV.
Why not?
What good does it do?
I'll tell you why. You drag them kicking and screaming into the public spotlight, and you completely expose the fallacies and the bigotry and the gibberish that they come out with. My belief in freedom of speech isn't freedom of speech for me. It's for you, and it's for other people that I don't agree with. Because once you start deciding that you can become the gatekeeper of who is allowed to hold acceptable opinions and who doesn't, then you're in serious trouble. Because the point of living in a free democracy is that the people I really disagree with, that they're the ones who are allowed to express the opinion.
But anyway, do you think I could change your mind? Do you genuinely believe I could change my mind, no matter what I say?
I change my mind all the time.
Okay.
I'm actually very open-minded. Like, if I come across an argument that's better than the argument I hold, you'd have to be pretty stupid to ignore that valid point. But I mean, knock yourself out. I mean, we have all night, you know. In a free society, you should be allowed to freely express your opinion, as long as you're not inciting crime, as long as you're not breaking the laws of the land. And we now seem to live in a world where if you don't agree 100% with the new zealots, that automatically you're a fascist. But this is what happens when you only have people who agree with each other, talking to each other.
As John and Susan get stuck into dessert, there's still only one topic on John's mind.
What would you do with €1 million, John?
How about if I spent my €1 million arranging a test of psychic abilities?
Yeah.
Let's say we brought in 50 people and you got to speak to each one of the 50. And in each case, you were sure in your heart, this person's departed relatives are speaking to me and I'm giving them genuine information. But we were able to talk to them afterwards and say, no, that doesn't sound like anything that happened in my life.
And what if they say, yes, it does?
There's a good question. So they all, one after another, said, there's absolutely no way Susan could know that, and yet she just told me this information. I would think, okay.
You'd second think it.
Yeah.
But doesn't have to change your mind. You can second think.
But if all 50 said, actually, that information just is not relevant to me at all, would you not start to think, maybe I've been fooling myself? Maybe I'm not really a psychic medium?
No, I wouldn't. No, I wouldn't. And I'm because I guarantee you at least one out of that 50. But no, there'd be more. There'd be more, yeah. I love skeptical people, but they need to be healthy, you know, take on other people's opinions and ideas and look at it. A closed mind can't receive any further information.
But you just said if all 50 people reported that Susan's information was irrelevant to me, you would still believe you're a psychic medium. Does that not mean that you have a closed mind?
I would, really now when you put that back to me, it does sound rather foolish, but I just would have confidence that that would not be the case.
Meanwhile, has the atmosphere improved at Ian and Jack's table?
OK, so do you think that children born today will have a better life than us?
I think the children born today, they will live in communism.
It's a rather horrifying, but thankfully ridiculous boast. But go on, tell me now.
Capitalism will crash. It just depends, is it going to go into fascism or is it going to go into socialism? Because we don't have much time. The climate change will kill us all.
God, you have such a genuinely apocalyptic and nihilistic vision of the future. I thought younger people were meant to be a bit more optimistic.
I'm optimistic.
What, you're optimistic that we're going to kill ourselves?
I'm optimistic capitalism will fall and we'll win.
In what, a dead planet?
No, we'll save the planet.
You'll inherit the empire of dust?
Not me. Everyone. I think communism will win. I feel like I often let him dominate the conversation just because I thought he was digging himself a hole. In retrospect, I think I should have dug deeper. And finally, what did you learn today?
Probably that I have less hope for the future than I did before I came in.
I learned nothing new from capitalist talking points, nothing new from right-wing talking points. Pretty much the same as it always has been. I thought it'd be very straightforward, it'd be a lot of back and forth. But how it actually went was like, he would talk for a long time, I might interject, or I would talk for a long time and he would interject. It was very one-sided, either him or me.
I don't think we had anything in common. Like, there's always a bit of commonality between two people who don't agree or don't like each other or whatever. You can always find something. But looking back, I genuinely don't think our paths aligned at all on anything.
Back with Laura and Kate, it's time for dessert.
Laura, can I ask you, and you can tell me if this is something you don't want to speak to, but have you ever thought about being a sex worker? And I just mean tried it on mentally, not as a decision of if you would like to actually do it.
No, because I don't think I'd be any good at it, Kate. And that's being perfectly honest. So, no, I'd be... I'm quite clumsy and my spatial awareness isn't great. I'd say I'd end up doing more damage than good. So, short but not so a sweet answer now to the question.
Oh, stop. That's funny.
What's the most outrageous thing you've ever done? And you know what? I don't think I've actually ever done anything outrageous, funnily enough. Yeah.
Well, most outrageous thing. Obviously, in the realm of sex work, I'd be doing things, especially because I entertain fantasies and fetishes. Sometimes somebody wants to pretend to be a baby. A baby?
I would say that's pretty outrageous, yeah, so.
Having sex with 6 men at one time was very exciting to me and just felt like a lot of attention on me. Is that outrageous to other people? I'd say so. But that thing exists in a way that is not malevolent. It was not to me.
What makes you roll your eyes?
John.
I think that's fair comment. I can be quite pedantic at times, so I wouldn't argue with Susan on that point.
So what makes you roll your eyes?
Well,
psychics.
Well, I have to say, Jesus said, sell everything you own and give it to the poor, and then come and follow me.
Yes.
And somehow the people who follow that guy have become the richest church the world has ever known. What will you take away from this experience?
I'll take away my understanding that I need to be able to explain this much more succinctly and clearly from my perspective, of course.
It's a good reminder that I need to explain more succinctly how this can happen, the mechanics of mediumship, how it can occur.
And I agree with a lot of what you say. And I would assume outside of the psychic word, you would agree also. So we all have to get on with life.
Yeah, and from my side, I think I remain to be convinced on the idea of psychic mediums. I don't think Susan and I are going to agree anytime soon on fundamental issues around the afterlife, but I don't think that makes us enemies either.
I would like to think that as he spoke to me, he realised I wasn't the witch with the big long nose and trying to get everybody's children and money off them.
I can only, again, speak for myself, not what I do, but I know it occurs.
Sure.
And I only try to do the best I can do.
This social experiment is vitally important to help people to manage diversity and difference when they meet in a conversation.
It is possible to respect somebody that you fundamentally disagree with. And you can see that when people share aspects that are common to one another and start to understand where their beliefs come from.
And finally, has this conversation changed anything for you? I think it's kind of just put paid to a lot of unnecessary baggage I had about the industry. So, yes. Yeah. Actually, having sat down with her and, listened to her and talked to her, I realised that, she's a human being with flaws, the same as the rest of us, and also many great qualities as well.
I will say I'm a sex athlete, though, Laura.
Yeah, and a very good one, I dare say, at that.
Nice one.
Yeah, okay.
I really liked Laura. I felt like she was a beautiful person. I feel like I met a friend, really. I find that her way of looking at things is quite unusual and really important, actually, in her open-mindedness around discourse of challenging topics. For somebody to be so open to my perspective as a sex worker and your investigation of it is quite admirable, and I really appreciate it. And I feel like we've just scratched the surface,
The one thing I've learned from eating with the enemy is that sometimes you can be wrong.
It's okay if people pick us up wrong, too. It's more important that we say things that are scary to say. And at least they're said, because people are thinking them anyways.